Welcome tonight. This is a brand new version of this particular web shop that we haven't done before. We're talking about real-time connections with your students. We've done something similar to this, but tonight it's really about trying to do a contrast and compare with two of the primary tools that we have at NCC, which is Blackboard Collaborate and Zoom. So hopefully that's what you're here for. But since it's only the three of you, I want to do this a little bit informally and ask you at this point right now, give me just a quick idea of number one, are you using either of these tools? And which one, if you are using one, maybe just slightly why? And then thirdly, what it is you're hoping to try to get out of this session. So you want to start for us, Michelle?
Okay. I use Blackboard Collaborate, and I use it because I just thought it would be easier for the students to find it since it's already on the Blackboard page for the classroom. And so I made it a virtual class. They can just click there, go in there and join the session. I thought it would save me some time as far as, going on Zoom and then trying to create a class and sending out ID numbers and all of that. I just felt like I didn't want to do that. And so when I found out about Collaborate, I used that for the fall. And it works, but there's so much about it that I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's the way it is with any application, so don't feel badly about that. And most applications that we use, even for people who are quote unquote experts in that application, Word, for instance, we're probably only scratching the surface of its full capabilities. So that's just the nature of the beast. But I want
Right.
to point out, I just shared my screen real briefly that Michelle already stole some of the thunder. You can see the agenda here, what it is we're going to talk about right here, advantages and disadvantages. And so listen to what Michelle said about the reason that she chose Blackboard Collaborate. Okay. Now, Michelle, go ahead and tell us if what you would like to get out of this besides just you don't know as much of the.
I see on your agenda, I would like to know more about the breakout groups. I
Okay.
tried it in the fall and it was a total disaster.
Okay.
I couldn't figure out how to get into the rooms. The students couldn't see me. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then in the fall, I was able to post my PowerPoint on the whiteboard, but
Okay.
I haven't been able to do that this semester.
Good. Good. Good.
So I'm not sure what's happening with that. And then I just fixed the sound issue. I think I know what happened.
Okay. Good.
So I could take that off my list.
All right. So I'm going to focus on breakout rooms in Blackboard Collaborate and also different ways to actually show a PowerPoint presentation. Good.
Oh, okay.
John, how about yourself?
I've been using Blackboard Collaborate for a while. I do 3 sessions in each one of my courses. Um, I just found anything these other software can do, Black Collaborate usually can do, and sometimes even better. I was able to capture a presentation and show the presentation through Blackboard. I couldn't do it through anything else. The only issue I did have though with some of these presentations was the audio, where sometimes it was like hit and miss. You would have a good one, then you would have a bad one, and some of these presentations were lengthy, like 20 minutes, and I would go back and listen to it, and it got all scratchy. And so what I would usually do, I do a test run. I would open the session, do a test run for like a minute or two, a test, read from the chapter, and then listen to it. And then if it was good, then I would do the full session. I did have a couple that were bad. I had to redo them. It just, the Audible got bad. And what I learned to do though is like, if the slide came up, I wouldn't read the full slide because I noticed if I kept reading the slide in length, I would like start to get like, the voice would get like underwater effect. So I would just bring out the major points on each slide instead of trying to read the whole thing. And I did make I did report it to Blackboard, and we went back and forth with the tech people, and they really couldn't figure out what the problem was. They said, turn this off, turn that off. So I did, like, a couple of the sessions I did, nobody was home, nothing else was on. I turned everything else off but my computer, but I still experienced some problems. So it was like hit and miss, but I did get them out, and I limited speaking. I just brought out the major points because the more you spoke, it seemed the voice got like underwater. It sounded like it was underwater.
So basically, what you're saying is your computer is sort of like your spouse and just got tired of listening to you. And
basically, yeah. And I tried everything possible too. I turned everything off. I moved the computer to another room. I got closer to the modem and everything, and it was hit and miss.
Okay.
But I would get lucky, and they would come out pretty good.
Yeah, well, seriously, I'm a little troubled by what you're saying because, as people tell me some of the things that are happening, I usually have an anecdote or a solution. But at the moment, I'm not sure what's going on with you, and I'm glad.
Yeah, I mean, the Blackboard people looked at it, a few of them, and then at the end, he wanted me to do a couple more, and it came out good. And it was like, okay, well, it looks like it resolved itself. And I'm like, well, today it did, but tomorrow I'll probably not have the same problem, and it did. Like the next time I tried, I did a test run, and it was bad. So
yeah,
I don't know what's going on. He couldn't explain it. I tried everything on the computer. Like I said, I would turn everything else off, and even my phone I would turn off. And some days it was good, some days it was bad.
Yeah, we may have to try to take some time together to see if we could figure that one out, or not to get too far down the road here, but the two things I always tell anybody to do about just about any problem is try another browser, number one.
Tried it.
Another computer, if you are able to.
Tried it. Did all that. Tried my kid's computer. Tried, The thing is, with this particular item I was doing, it only seemed to work in Chrome. Chrome was able to, with Collaborate, Chrome was able to capture this presentation, where the other browsers weren't able to pick it up.
Okay. All right. Well, so we're probably not going to get to your particular.
Yeah, I understand. No problem.
Tonight. Is there anything else in regard to the?
No, I mean, most of the time I do like a final exam review, a midterm exam review, and a orientation class at the beginning of the class where I record it. And usually I have students attend, and we talk about, in the orientation class, we talk about the requirements for the course, the syllabus, etc. I record it, I post it. So if any student couldn't make the session, they can go in and review it.
Good. That's excellent. Did anybody else pick up on the nuance between what Michelle was talking about and what John was talking about? Because what I heard between the lines was that Michelle was doing live synchronous sessions. John was primarily talking about recorded asynchronous sessions, weren't you? Yeah. So just another nuance to how you can use these tools as well. Where you have an audience or you don't, or what John's saying. And I'm glad you mentioned, John, too, in the recording, the length. Typically, we don't want to make it too long, especially if we're not, quote unquote, a video editor type of person and you don't have the tools to do video editing. Because the longer you make it, whatever doesn't work right, the longer you have to do it again. Or to read.
Yes, I found that out. But
yes.
in this particular case, these presentations were taken from somewhere else, and I kind of they were that long just to get through them.
Okay, yeah, I understand. You got to do that. So that's definitely one thing in regard to length of a presentation, and also we say a good rule of thumb, even if you actually have people listening to you at the time, is you don't want your presentations to be too long. They start to lose interest. And even if you are doing a live synchronous class, Michelle, it's not a bad idea every 15 minutes or so, just to take a short break and, and then get back to it, whatever the case may be. We call that chunking.
Right.
Good when it comes to video. Um, you think I'm going to model that tonight? Not. unless somebody tells me, hey, can we have a bio break, please? All right. So, Jackie, what do you have for us?
So I have exclusively used Zoom, which when everything started with COVID, I don't know, just decided to do that. And actually was sort of under the impression that maybe Collaborate Live was more complex to use. I don't know, but I've liked Zoom. I ended up having my own account and I can have longer sessions, which I really like. And, have been able to use, share the screen, the whiteboard and things like that. What I would like to do tonight is learn how to do the groups and also, if possible, how to do the, like the surveys, like if I'm in the middle of and I usually do synchronous if I'm in the middle of doing like a lab or lecture with students, how I could do like a survey and then the students share the results with the students or like a practice question, sort of like that Mentimeter. Do you remember that?
Sure.
Yeah, I really love that. Students like that. I never bought the program. We were supposed to get it from the school, but I don't think that ever happened. Remember Mike McGovern or somebody or Sedgwick or somebody
Right.
using it in a professional staff meeting. And I'm like, oh, that'd be great. And then that was kind of like the end of it. And if you do Mentimeter by yourself, just as an introduction, it's limited, I think, to 3 questions. So, but there was 1 or 2 classes where I would do that and the students really liked it. But anyway, I would like to learn to do that. I think it's great feedback for students and a great platform for being able to explain, well, why A wasn't the right answer, but B and C are the right answers. And
there's no doubt that that type of tool, and we've been through some iterations of that since we started using tools like that at the college. But that type of tool allows for a combination, I think, of student engagement, the ability, if you make it anonymous when you're asking questions, for people who might not engage to get a little bit more engaged and not feel like they might look stupid if they gave the wrong answer or something like that. And also, it allows for some assessment capabilities, right? I'm thinking back to 2006 when we brought the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire clickers to the college. We literally had remote controls and we were doing it through PowerPoint, and we actually created, we had kits throughout various instructor stations throughout all the campuses and whatnot. Not everyone, but and that was a very prolific tool for a number of years. And obviously, what Jackie's talking about, Mentimeter, is a web-based polling type of software or audience response system, whatever it is you want to call it. And yes, these 2 tools, Collaborate and Zoom, both have polling features built into their capabilities. So it's a great way to pause your lecture or whatever and gauge if they're paying attention. Some people, I remember even, again, with Turning Point and those clickers in 2006, one of the best practices was do a pre-lecture quiz. You call it a quiz, but it's just a series of questions to see what they learn, what they know, and then do your lecture and then do a post-lecture and using the same questions and see how much they gained, what knowledge they gained through the course of the 50 or 75-minute lecture that you did on a subject. So these kinds of tools built into these real-time interaction capabilities in our new remote world certainly are good. And the same thing with the breakout rooms, that interactivity certainly helps. It gives us the ability to create some spontaneity and allow people to work with each other and discuss things amongst themselves during, again, a synchronous session. So we've got two people that are focusing a little bit more synchronously, one person asynchronously, even though John does do some live sessions. And just to clarify too, what Jackie's comment was about, she has more time with her Zoom sessions now. If you have your own account with Zoom, and anybody can get a free account, it's called Basic, the limitation of the time in a session is 40 minutes. So once you pay for an account, or once you get an NCC Zoom account, that limitation goes away. Okay, it's just one comparison and contrast also regarding these tools. All right, thank you for your contributions. Let me go ahead and share the screen again. I'll bring up one more time that agenda document. Hopefully you can see that here on the main screen. Yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, and I'll make it a little bigger because that's the right thing to do when you're doing these kinds of things. All right, so I'm not going to belabor the what this was all about thing. I think we have a pretty good idea, but I'm going to share this document with you too, because it does have some resources on it, as you can see here, that I want you to be able to have. And last but not least, down at the bottom, it's got a link to this document, which I'm going to give you in the chat. Maybe I better do that now before I forget. So let me grab the link to this. And does everybody know how to get to chat in Zoom? That's one of our features tonight.
No.
Yes.
All right, so it should be at the bottom of your Zoom window, although the Zoom window right now looks a little, well, it's hard to see the actual interface when somebody's sharing their window. I do these kinds of troubleshooting things with faculty all the time, and we usually do it via Zoom. Lots of times, in order for them to reorient themselves around what I'm talking about in Zoom, I have to stop sharing so they can see the interface better. So I'm going to do that for a second, and you'll hopefully can see right down at the bottom toolbar now,
Yeah.
chat features right there. And depending upon how big your window is with Zoom, and this is each individual, will depend on how much you'll see in your toolbar. So if you make your window skinnier, you may have some of your tools in the 3-button ellipsis where it says more. You might have to go to more to get to those extra tools, okay? So I brought up the chat on my side, and I'm gonna put the link to that document right here in the chat, and if you should be able to see it, and you can click on that link right now. It'll open up in a web browser for you, and then you'll have it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's one thing you can do with your students too. So, all right, going back to sharing.
Should I open it now? Oh, we're opening that now? Oh, wait.
Well, you can, I'm suggesting that you click on the link just so that it opens up a browser on your computer. You can use that browser in the background, and then after we're done, you can use this as a resource.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and you can save it as a bookmark if you want to on your browser. All right.
Okay.
All right, I'm going back to sharing here, and here we are. So these other links, obviously this is my NCC. Don't forget, in my NCC, in a lot of places, you actually do have to log in to my NC to see some of the content. Online Learning and Ed Tech have created some one-sheet guides to various tools, ed tech tools. We're going to see one of those one-sheet guides tonight because it partly is a comparison of Zoom and Blackboard with Microsoft Teams thrown in there. So we're going to use that as a little bit of a reference tonight. And then also the second reference here is actually that one sheet that I'm talking about. So this is all the one sheets we have right here. And then this is the specific reference to the one sheet that we're going to show tonight. This is a Padlet. Does everybody know what a Padlet is or not?
Yes.
Yes.
And Michelle?
Oh, I lost you for a minute. I'm back.
Okay, do you know what a
No,
Padlet is?
I don't know what a
Okay,
Padlet.
real quick, and you're going to see it too. But Padlet is a web-based, it can be a presentation tool. All right, I don't know if that's the best category to put it in. Basically, what it is, it's like you have a board and you can put posts on that board, and that board is, you know, a particular topic or a particular story or whatever it is you want it to be. So over the course of time, we've created some Padlets with various pieces of resources and information about certain tools. And I have one regarding Zoom. I actually used it during a session over the summer. Okay. And then we have these other links directly to Blackboard Collaborate help. And this is actually on the Blackboard Collaborate help site. I just thought of something, you know, Zoom has a fantastic help site too. And I'm going to add that to this to this document after we're done, all right? So make sure I do that. But real quick, let's just go. So these are some of the particular tools, resources that I'd like you to know about. So this guy right here is actually over here in my window already. And I'm just going to scoop that over here. And there it is. So this is, as I said, we call them one sheets. We're just trying to give a little bit of information about tools that compare to one another to some degree so that, you know, you have an idea of how they do compare and which one you might want to choose. Now, just looking at this one sheet probably isn't going to be the be all and end all for you to make a decision about one of these tools, but it is a start. So you can see that we have some general information about Blackboard Collaborate, general information about Microsoft Teams, and some general information about Zoom. So scratch Microsoft Teams for tonight, but just know that that is something that is available to us as well, because we are a Microsoft shop now completely at NCC. I say that because, you know, it wasn't until the fall that our students were using Google Mail, but now our students use Outlook Mail, and that means that they have access to all of the Microsoft tools that you and I have access to as well, because we're an Office 365 shop, which is now called Microsoft 365 instead of Office 365. But okay, so Teams is just another collaborative tool where you actually do have a component where you can do the conferencing just like we are here in Zoom. But Blackboard Collaborate is meant for synchronous classes, synchronous office hours, and communicate with your students in more or less a live mode. It is fully web-based. You don't have to download anything, right? And you know, it's pretty secure, we say. I'm looking at all these tips here, that because it is right within Blackboard itself. There's no reason for you to have to necessarily email people a link to anything in Blackboard Collaborate. That makes it secure, much more secure just in and of itself. Okay? So it's pretty kind of cool that it's right there. And of course, that means that there's no separate account that you have to set up as a user like Jackie did. So she wanted to have more than 40 minutes in a basic Zoom account. Even when she filed for a basic Zoom account, a free one, she still had to provide some information, who she was, her email address, and things like that. But then she upgraded it and got more capability by paying a little bit for it on top of a free account. But she had to create that. With you, for Collaborate, you already have it. Everybody has it as a user in Blackboard, and it's part of each and every course. So one big difference between Zoom and Blackboard Collaborate is that Collaborate is very, very strictly, I shouldn't use the word strictly, but very, very emphatically an academic virtual classroom learning tool, okay? It is right within the course functionality itself. Zoom is not within anything else. It's a in and of itself. And it's not really built just for academics. As a matter of fact, Zoom was built as a work group tool, probably some 7 to 10 years ago. I don't remember exactly when they started. And obviously, it has morphed, like other things have, into a good educational virtual classroom tool. Okay. But it's by itself and it doesn't live within any classroom like Blackboard does. Now, there are some integrations of Zoom with various platforms like Blackboard, like Canvas and things like that, other LMSs. But since we have Collaborate right inside of Blackboard, we see no reason to actually do that. So that means that, you know, there's good and bad to that. From a classroom perspective, I think it's very good that Collaborate is right there inside of Blackboard for a number of reasons. And Zoom, on the other hand, you know, again, is very, very prolific and well created, very easy to use, rather intuitive, the whole bit, except that it's just out there by itself. You literally have to either email, you could put the link inside the Blackboard course for a Zoom session and all that kind of stuff. But just consider this. Again, we're kind of jumping the gun and doing some comparing and contrasting that's in the agenda, but we're just doing it here while we're talking about looking at this particular resource. Then with Zoom, you just give an example. Like in Blackboard, you have the ability to create multiple sessions. You could even create sessions that are not necessarily for you. They could be for your students alone, and that they can go into that. Now, I'm not sure that Jackie would feel comfortable giving somebody else her Zoom account so that they could just jump into a session without her on her Zoom account. But that's the difference between the two tools from an academic perspective. And that's why Blackboard Collaborate's called Collaborate, because you're really, really collaborating. Your students can collaborate with each other. You can collaborate with the students, et cetera, and you're doing so right in the confines of the course itself. Now, Zoom has some really great qualities, and we'll talk about that when we talk a little bit more about Zoom. But from the perspective of a virtual classroom, Collaborate really is pretty wonderful because it's this entire package right inside your course. Okay. So on the Zoom side, looking at some of the tips over here, it talks about the fact that you have a free account, blah, blah, blah. There is a little bit less security involved, but believe me, even since this was made back in August, Zoom has created and upgraded their platform with more security features. You probably know now you could add a password. You could make sure that you provide your session with a waiting room. So you actually literally have to let people in the door to make sure you don't let anybody in the door that you don't know. And thirdly, once everybody's in, you can actually lock the session so that nobody else crashes it. But when we started using Zoom back when remote learning became remote learning and we got into the new normal, I remember the new term that was coined probably as early as, you know, March 30th. It didn't take very long, and it was Zoom bombing. Has anybody ever heard of Zoom bombing? Basically, you know, wedding crashers. It's basically people getting a hold of any link and just jumping into a session, and you don't know who they are, you know. So that said, this is a little bit of a comparison sheet for you to look at if you feel like it later on. You know, we look at some of the features. Are there capacity differences? Sure. They all can do breakout rooms. Everyone has audio. They all have file sharing and whatnot, and certain things that you can do that or that you can't do between one and the other. But as you can see, generally speaking, there's a lot of similar capabilities between these two tools. All right. Any questions at this point?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. Dispensing with that one. All right. Let's look at the Zoom Padlet. That would be right here. So this is what a Padlet looks like, Michelle. There's a number of different formats for a Padlet. Sometimes you see columns on it. Sometimes you just see random squares or rectangles. This one was meant to sort of flow in a sequence, and it just basically goes from top to bottom. But in this particular Padlet, and I hope you do actually look at it later on, I have a very interesting video. I've got some things about coping when we're doing these conferences, about being zoomed out. Again, this was for a different reason that I put this together, and I'm getting to the real meat that I want you guys to know about. This is a funny call about how things can really go badly when you're doing some of these sessions, especially with bandwidth. We need to talk.
That was me this morning.
What was that?
I said, that is me, that meme. That was
That cat?
me.
Okay.
Yes,
Because your audio wasn't working. Yeah.
no.
So it's good to be aware that whichever one of these tools you use, that there are some variables, some are in your control and some are out of your control, but you really should become familiar with what they might be so that one, you can either troubleshoot, or two, and this goes whether you're doing things remotely or you're in that brick and mortar room. Sometimes your plan doesn't work out, correct?
Yep.
So you should always come with what?
Plan B.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so you can walk into that classroom, the projector doesn't work. No. So just be aware that, you know, especially when you're talking with technology, that you should always be ready for a bunch of different things, okay? There's a nice article here about do's and don'ts, and it goes a little bit beyond what we're talking about tonight, but you may find some of this information rather interesting for you to peruse at your leisure or your leisure, whichever you choose. All right, so this does have a reference to some help sites with Zoom, okay, so that's good. Here it talks about screen sharing, the whiteboard, annotation tools, chat. So this will hopefully be a good reference for you. Looky. Jackie.
Yes.
Overview, manage, participate, okay? Yeah, we're gonna try to do some of this tonight, but I want you to know that you have resources as well, all right? So hopefully this will be something that you can look at, not just after we're done tonight because you won't have anything better to do, but sometime in the future too. And I stole this from somebody else, but I always thought that was kind of cute. Give you a chance to read that.
That's cute.
I think the bottom line I always like to be telling people when they're doing these kinds of things is, you know, I hope you could see I'm pretty informal myself, right? Don't get caught up in, you know, you're not doing a studio production here, you know, be yourself, show your content just like you would in a regular classroom. Let them know you're real. That means you may make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. That's really a big thing to take away when you're doing some of this stuff as a best practice. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. And then last but not least, I just wanted to show you, we're talking about this, these particular help guides right here. Does everybody know how to find help when you're in your Blackboard course for instructors?
The navigation menu?
It's in the menu. It's the last thing at the bottom. Help. I just want everybody to be aware that it's there because I think Blackboard Help is pretty darn helpful. And this is just one page on Blackboard Help when you click Help from your Blackboard course in the navigation menu. And I went right to moderating collaborate sessions. You can see the pathway I took to get there inside of Blackboard Help.
Okay.
But this page of moderating sessions is broken down into these areas. Okay? And it'd be great for you to explore these one at a time or to go directly to the one that you might be interested in. But I would say, you know, looking at the best practices and then going through these areas might be a nice thing to do again on a weekend where you're not jet setting to LA, right? These days. All right. So fantastic stuff. So are you having some audio and video problems?
Oh, okay.
Oh, make sure you get it set up, do your audio test. Some things you can troubleshoot might be in here, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
May not give you exactly what you're looking for, but it's a lot of good information on every page. Blackboard has spent a lot of time and effort on these resources, and they're fairly good. Right? Just know that they're accessible to you always from your Blackboard course. This little search area here is very good. It's not Cortana and it's not Siri, but it is BBE or something, or BB, we'll call them. But it's a good search. Of course, you can't sit here and say, "Hey, BB, search audio." It doesn't work that way.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I just want you to be aware of these resources because I think I am not always available to you, nor is the other experts in my group. And I believe in trying to provide people with help to help themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting to the real agenda, we saw a little bit about the features of Zoom and Blackboard Collaborate, and we heard some of you extol some of those things. And the features are obviously not endless, but they are rather dramatic and give you a lot of capabilities with both platforms to engage your students, for you to do something similar to what you've done in the classroom. It's not 3D, sorry, but maybe one day it will be. Who knows? Um, the three primary components, of course, and I don't mean to belabor this, but just be sure you understand, are one, and the biggest one is what you are saying.
Yeah.
Voice is the most important component. So do make sure that that is good. Make sure it's quality. Make sure it's plugged in. Uh, John, talking about remaking collaborate sessions, there was, I'm thinking of a particular instructor. Now, I've had this issue with multiple instructors, but one instructor in particular would usually send me an email and say, "I don't hear the audio in my recording. Can you look at this and figure out what happened?" And 9 times out of the 10, they probably just didn't click their microphone on.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware that it is working. I'm glad, John, that you said earlier that you actually do a quick test and make sure that what the result was is what you were looking for. So audio is very important. What you say is very important. Keep in mind your pace and other things. It isn't meant to be a best practices session, but the other important thing can be your camera. Now, not everybody feels that way. And some people just have an aversion to showing their face on the camera. But we do believe, especially in this new world, that engaging with your students or becoming more comfortable with your students happens a little bit more by having this kind of relationship with some audio and video. And it doesn't mean it has to be 100% of the time, but it's certainly good to do so from time to time or at certain points in time where you're trying to use emphasis. Even myself, I may turn my video off while I'm talking sometimes if we're working on something that I want people to focus on what I'm sharing on my screen rather than my video. So it's kind of the things that you would do in a classroom too, maybe where, let's say you normally have something up from the projector, from your computer up on the screen or whatever it is you got in your classroom, but you're talking to them and it's not necessarily about what's on the screen. I mean, I know some instructors that will go over there and they'll block the screen just so that the focus is now on you and whatever it is you're discussing. And then they go back and they unblank the screen and talk more about what's up on the screen. So, having that concentration or focus for your students is also a benefit of the video that you're showing. However, video isn't just for your pretty face. Definitely not mine. It's also for objects, you know, and cameras that are fixed. This is the way you have to show your object. Yes, that's my wife's mug from my son's school, not mine. And if you have a camera that is actually detached, it's really good to be able to put it anywhere. Like I could have a little whiteboard over here on my wall, and I can focus that camera on my whiteboard, and I can draw all different kinds of smiley faces. Very, very academic, yes. Or, you know, I might have a particular anatomy model, and I can literally show that anatomy model in my camera. And again, it's one way here I am showing it with my hands up, but if I actually put that model down on the desk and I have a camera that I can actually bring over the top of the model and point down, you know, or to the side or whatever it is, that's a good reason to actually have your camera on during these sessions as well. Right? Again, I apologize if some of these things are really obvious to you, but just want to point them out. And we're talking about the features here. So, and last but not least, and again, priority depends, is your desktop or a particular application or whatever. So lots of times what we're doing today, and John mentioned it, I'm showing my students around my Blackboard course so they know where to find what, and they don't ask me 10,000 questions throughout the semester. Right, John?
They'll still ask, but I try.
So what's the answer, John?
I record it and
I watch the video, right?
watch the
Go
video,
watch the video.
which they don't do, but
Right.
I tell
Well,
them.
that's their problem. You know? It's there somewhere. They can start to help themselves. So you're obviously whatever you have on your computer is very important. And you know, there's a number of ways. You saw that I have this little pop-up circle that I can bring attention. My cursor, my mouse cursor. I have trails on there, so hopefully it shows up a little bit more for people who are watching on the other end. And of course, you can annotate too. So Zoom has some annotation capabilities throughout the platform. One advantage of Zoom over Blackboard Collaborate, Blackboard Collaborate has some annotation capabilities too, but only when you're using it with certain functions / features, not all features. Like right now, I could bring up the annotation mechanism for Zoom, and I could be annotating, you know, in colors and, you know, writing on this document right here with my mouse if I wanted to. Okay, so that's one thing to know, and it's also a good feature of both. But Zoom is a little bit better with that feature than Collaborate is. And you know what? Whatever I say about advantages and disadvantages might be totally thrown out the window in 30 days' time, because you can imagine how all these technology companies are sort of like biting at the bit to gain a one-up on each other during this time period, because they're all gaining market share. They're bringing on new users and everything. So it's really important for them to keep making their tools better. So this is a good thing that's come out of this whole situation, that the stuff that we use in ed tech is just going to continue to wow us and make things more capable in our classrooms. So you look out for that. So just a little bit about the NCC usage part of the agenda here is that just know, as I already said, that with Blackboard Collaborate, it's already there. It's at your disposal. You have it in each and every course. And while we're talking about that, I just want to say that for anybody who teaches one course but multiple sections, you know, it may or may not be a good idea, but if you want to, you can just have one session in one course and invite the other students to that same session. Did I say that right? Okay. So that, you know, you don't have to do 3 different sessions if you teach 3 different sections of the course. You could have everybody come together. So just because it's a tool in a course doesn't mean that it can't be used outside of that course as well. Obviously with Zoom, you can invite whoever you want, wherever you want. basically. Don't forget too that while Zoom, it seems obvious that you can invite your sister-in-law to drop in if you want her to. You can do that with Collaborate as well. You can send out the link to your session to whoever. Let's say you want to bring in a guest presenter, do a virtual field trip. You can, find, you've got a professor friend at University of Southern California, I don't know, and you want him to come and talk about X, Y, or Z. Go ahead and give him the link to Blackboard Collaborate or Zoom and make that person the appropriate level of permission capability. The two tools title those things a little bit differently, but the general scoop is a moderator has full privileges or a host has full privileges. A participant usually has the lowest privilege, and somebody who might be a presenter is kind of in between. They can actually present, but they can't like knock people out of a room like a moderator can, just as an example there. So privileges are something that each of these tools has, and you can provide to the various people involved in the session. All right. With Zoom, you can get your own account, or if you want or care for an NCC account, you would have to make a request to the help desk with your supervisor's approval, because it does cost us something to have a paid account for you. But it would be an account with your email address at NCC, and it would give you all the privileges, bells and whistles that are afforded to the enterprise account status that we have with Zoom at NCC. Okay. The bottom line, though, is that with either of those two tools at the highest level, we pretty much have unlimited capability. Right now, there's a little bit of difference between Blackboard Collaborate and Zoom in the number of videos that you can see simultaneously when you're in a live synchronous session. So Michelle, if you have 10 people in one of your sessions in Collaborate, probably don't get to see 10 videos at a time, correct?
Yeah, no, I don't.
4 is the limitation at the moment. And that limitation was self-imposed by Blackboard Collaborate because video, your video, their video, adds a little bit more to the entire process, both for your session and for the Collaborate world and all the servers that are being utilized by everybody throughout the world. So their knee-jerk reaction in the end of March of 2020 was to say, hey, we have to limit the amount of video that can be shown at any one time in our sessions because we don't have full capacity to handle that at this point and still make it available to all the people that want to use the platform, okay? So right now it's 4. With Zoom, it's 49. 49 people in one screen.
I know.
So for some people, that's a big enough difference for them to say, you know what, Blackboard Collaborate's great inside of Blackboard, but I want to see everybody all on one screen. I'm using Zoom. Okay? So that's what you're going to get as far as those differences are concerned. And I'm probably not going to be able to tell you all of them or think about all of them. Is there any questions that you have at this point? Because now we're going to start jumping into actually using the tools. Anything more about the comparison? Okay, good. So in order to do Zoom, and the idea is to actually go through each one of these, we'll do a little bit of sharing, breakout, chat, and record. Now we can actually try some of these as well in the session that we're in if you want to see what it's like as a participant, but you won't be able to see what it's like as a host because that's me. I'm sorry, you can't be host. Right? So in order to just show you the steps, that's why I said I actually went through the process of doing this PowerPoint. So have Michelle or John, have either of you tried Zoom at all?
I've used Zoom for when I was still working at another job, I used Zoom for my staff meetings.
Okay.
So I know how to use it.
Okay, and John, have you ever seen the interface?
Just with your training and stuff and
So you've never
meetings
been
in
on the,
college.
you've never been on the hosting end then, right?
No.
Okay, so what you're seeing right here is what I would see when I start my Zoom session, right?
Right.
Notice all the different things at the bottom here that you don't see on yours, and you may not see it now because I'm sharing my screen, but a few more things. So obviously with a host, you have more permissions and more capabilities. And some of the ones that we're going to talk about tonight, Jackie would love to talk about this one. If we can, we'll get to it. Polling. You have chat capability, right? Sharing or presenting, and there's multiple things that you can present. A little bit about recording, okay, which is what we're doing right now. And under this more button, you'll see in a minute that we have breakout sessions as well. Okay, so
Joe,
can
can I ask you a question?
Go right ahead. Please feel free to jump in.
So when I have my screen, there must be something you have to click or do in
Very
order
good.
for that polls
Right.
to show up.
Okay, so there is something that I didn't want to get into too much in this session, but know that there's two levels of settings for Zoom, okay? You have a general settings area, which would impact sort of more globally or generally things that you do in Zoom overall. And you can have specific meeting settings per session,
Oh,
okay?
okay.
So you would need to go into your sessions area, Jackie, and make sure that you have polling turned on.
Okay.
When you see your list of different things, features, you basically have this little toggle button. And if it's white, it's off. And if it's blue, it's on.
Yes, I know that what you're talking about.
So that's why you wouldn't see it on the screen as a moderator or a host. Okay. All right. Screen number 2 is what if you want to start presenting something? So what I did basically to get to screen number 2 there was click on this share screen button, which is what I did to get in the mode that we're in with you right now. So I click on share screen, and then this is what I see. I'm asked to select something, right? So for those of you that are Blackboard Collaborate users, this may look different, but believe it or not, your processes are very, very similar. It will look different, but the idea, the concept is the same. So keep in mind, you'll see the same thing happening when we do Blackboard on this. So I get to pick from basically what shows up here is the things that you have opened on your computer. So unfortunately, I have way too many things open, but I also have 2 monitors, 2 displays. I can choose from an entire screen 1 or an entire screen 2, or any of the particular applications that might be running right now. So all I do is highlight that one thing, and whatever I highlight, I can then share, and it shows me the result of that. Before I share, it's a good idea to keep in mind these 2 items down here. If you are going to do anything like share a video or share some sound out of your computer, not your microphone, your voice, you need to click one of those 2 buttons. Because if you do a video and it's got audio with it, they won't hear that on the other side. You'll hear it while you're playing it, but they won't hear it. So this needs to be checked right here in order to ensure if you show a video while you're sharing to your students, they'll get the audio. Any questions there?
Nope.
So next, I beg your pardon. Yes. Okay. So technically, I shared my entire desktop, and what was in my desktop is what you're seeing on the screen, a Blackboard course. Notice the green bar, the green outline around it. That's an indicator in Zoom that tells you you're sharing that to your students. And then the other thing that happens when you share is you get this floating Zoom toolbar now, because it basically broke you out of the Zoom interface. So now you just get this floating toolbar so that you can do some other things still in Zoom. And the toolbar you can actually drag to other places if it gets in your way. Just like you have to do that sometimes with the video panel. You know, when Zoom is running, you got to get the video panel out of the way so you can see other things that are happening on the desktop. All right, so I'm basically showing right now to my students, this is what it would look like to you as the host if you were showing your Blackboard course. All right, next, remember I said that Ellipsis has more. Here's where breakout rooms are, right? Again, if you made that Zoom interface full screen, you might not even see this more button, okay? And you might have breakout rooms right here next to reactions. You know, and you got closed captions right next to that. It's just a matter of the amount of real estate. You can't show all the buttons if you squeeze it down a little bit, right? So right here, you would click on breakout rooms. And then when you do that, you get this. Hey, what do you want to do? How many rooms do you want to create? Do you want to assign it automatically, manually, or let the participants choose? Okay. And then you hit create. And when you do that, it says, poof, now we have our rooms. I was doing this with nobody in it. So this is something that is dynamic. You can't really set up breakout rooms before you start your session. Okay, Jackie?
Yes.
Right. So I didn't have anybody in my Zoom, so you don't see anybody here, and I can't make multiple rooms until I actually have people to put into those multiple rooms. So this isn't a fair example, but it's the best I had without bringing 5 other people in to create this. Okay.
Joe, when you, can you go back to the page that like right before this? Yes. So if you said create, I don't know, 8 rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and it says assign automatically, when people come in, aren't they placed in those rooms? See, I remember I told you yesterday that I did that game thing, like on that's what happened is people, when it said assign automatically, she had, because Beth Ritter was in there and a couple other people, when they randomly put us with, and I think
But you were already in that Zoom session.
I was in the Zoom session.
Yes.
And then they created those rooms. So when we came
Correct.
in, we were placed, like I was in the green room, but I didn't need to be in the room until they decided to utilize the rooms.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So again, you have to have participants in order to have breakout rooms.
Right.
That's
Right.
the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, and you got to decide what's the appropriate number in each room. So if you got 24 students and you do 8 rooms, you got 3 people in a room.
Right.
If I do my math right. Okay. So yeah, really not sure about your nuance there, Jackie, but bottom line is you really can't do anything until you actually have people.
Right. But as people, like if you had create 10 breakout rooms and you assigned automatically and you put create and you click create, I think what happened when I was in it was that you were put in a room when you were admitted to the Zoom session. I think they didn't, but they didn't.
That could be possible.
I mean, we weren't in rooms initially.
Yeah.
Like we were put in a room, but we weren't made to go to those rooms until they got to a certain part of the.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that a little bit closer, but
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, this is something basically that you would do. I mean, it doesn't take long. It's a matter of clicking a button and then clicking another button, making a choice, and then saying go. It happens pretty darn quickly. It won't be that hard to do it on the fly. Okay. I'll make a note about that to see if there's any way to do it to predetermine, basically, or pre-set up Zoom breakout. Okay. So once you do that, you say open the rooms, and it basically takes them there. And this page would obviously say the number of rooms that you have and who's in them. And then when you see them there on this page, right, in this area, I'm sorry, I'm not showing you any, you can actually pop into them one at a time. You can't be in all of them at the same time, but you can go to them one at a time and pop out so that you can just sort of be a fly on the wall for a little while they're doing their thing that you asked them to. And then when you click, and notice that obviously you can actually send a message to them. Something might be like, hey, I want you to stop doing that and now talk about this question or something like that. What might be the answer to this question? And you could put that as a broadcast. And then when you hit close all rooms, they basically come back and you're all together again in the general Zoom space, right? Now, keep this in mind, if you are recording your Zoom session, breakouts aren't recorded. Only the main session is recorded when you do recordings. So the next thing is chat. Obviously, it's right down here at the bottom of Zoom. You probably have all used that. It brings up its own little modal, and you can type your questions or comments in here, and then everything that you do type shows up here. If somebody else puts in a chat post, that shows up here as well. And you can, if you want to, specifically do a chat to an individual privately, if necessary. There are some other components here, as you see, of the chat. You can save it, and you can do a few other things. Again, it depends upon the settings that you've applied for either the meeting or in general as to what your capabilities are or not with the chat. Sometimes you don't want to let people save the chat, and you want to turn that off as a capability for others, but you might want to save the chat. Usually as a host, your chat is saved automatically. Any questions about chat? That one's probably pretty obvious, right? Okay, and now we're back to record. When you're in Zoom, you usually have a record button right down here. And Jackie found out that there are 2 places to record to if you have an account that either NCC has paid for or you have paid for yourself. Free accounts only allowed recording to your own computer, but once you pay for something, you have both either your computer or to their cloud. So in other words, you have storage of capability up in your own Zoom account for recordings. And that makes it really easy to share because all you're doing is grabbing a link and then providing that link to your students to watch the recording in Zoom. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. All right. You can see that once you do start recording, it shows up here, right? This tells you that I chose cloud recording, and I could easily pause or stop the recording. And once I click stop, it's going to ask you to confirm that, and you say yes. Now, if you say stop your recording, will your recording be processed? No, and that's for both Collaborate and Zoom. You have to make sure you close the session and everybody is out of it, else the recordings won't process. I think they might eventually, but it's going to take possibly 8 to 24 hours for you to have any recording if you've left it open. All right, that's an important point to remember. So that's Zoom. Jackie?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. What time is it? Wait, it's already 7:44. You and I can talk about polling another time?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Well, now that I know that, let me see if I can play with it. I think I'm just going to set up a Zoom for
Okay.
me to play in, and I'll see if I can open that.
I mean, if you want to send the link to me and, when I'm available, I'll get on with you.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about Collaborate. Again, looking at both or all of sharing, breakouts, and recording. And bopping over right to the course that I had up there before, right there. So this is on the Collaborate dashboard. We get there by either clicking this in the menu or going down to course tools here or course tools here. Of course, that's what it is. It's a tool or a feature inside of Blackboard. But once we're here, we're at the main live sessions page. And if we have recordings, in order to get to them, we have to open the recordings page by using that hamburger menu. So you can't display both live sessions and recordings on one page. You have to switch between them. By default, whenever you go into Collaborate, it'll be on live sessions, right? Another thing about this Collaborate dashboard that people sometimes forget is, oh, wait, I can't find what I'm looking for. Make sure that you choose the appropriate filter here. Whether it's a live session or a recording, you have a filter, and it's usually a time-oriented filter. So are we talking about future sessions? Obviously, that wouldn't be on the recording page. Any previous sessions that you want to see, a particular range of sessions. Same kind of thing with the recording. So if you can't find something, it could be that you don't have the right filter on, all right? So with Blackboard Collaborate, all we have to do is create a session. I'm just going to do something on the fly here. Jackie, you haven't really seen this process yet, I guess.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's real easy. All I do is create session. I give the session a name, or we're going to call this session Tonight. That's what this session is, Tonight. And we give it some details. If we want to share it outside of the course, you got to do this, okay? And then you got to come and get this link when you do that. All right, we provide a future time or a current time right here and an end date. You could, again, here's a big difference between this tool and Zoom. You could create a session here and have it open from the start of your class on January 25th to the end on May, I don't know, 7th. I'm not sure what the last day of classes is. And your students can pop in whenever they want and use that with themselves if necessary. You know, you might have them working on a project or something like that. You know, you don't have this ability exactly with Zoom, right? At least not one that you would feel comfortable using. All right, it can be open-ended or it can be repeating sessions. All right, we can actually do them. Like, Michelle, do you teach at a certain time every week?
Yeah.
Yep, so you can make recurring sessions that go until May 7th, and they start at Tuesday at 9:30 all the time, you know? And that's what you would do
I
here.
didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what this guy is for, repeat session.
I
Right?
go in and create one every week.
When I see what happens when I click on it, I get more stuff.
Oh.
Weekly, monthly, all right, every week, every 2 weeks, which days of the week, when do you want it to end?
Okay.
Okay, so you can make, what happens is it becomes like a folder, and the folder contains each and every one of those sessions.
Okay.
It turns out that the link to that, though, all those sessions is the same, which is good, but they only open up at that time every week.
Okay.
All right, and then you can put a description. Once you have that, you simply say create that session. Notice that it shows up over here on the left now.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, there's a few more settings, Jackie, that you can look at. So for instance, if this was something for your students to practice doing their own presentations, hey, let's go ahead and make them all presenters so they can use some of the presentation tools that are in Collaborate, right? As an example. These other things, you can turn them on, turn them off, turn them on, turn them off. They're kind of self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through that. I just really want to create the session so you can start doing something in it. So now that I've saved that, all right, I come over here, close this out, and now I can actually start my session. So I may not do this in the same order that I did the other one, but here we are. I'm going to join right there. And this is what happens. It works inside the web browser, and it pops up something. Remember, in Collaborate, you were in your own little GUI. Well, with Blackboard, I'm sorry, when we were doing Zoom, you were in your own little application. With Blackboard, you're just inside a web browser, so it works right within the web page. But a lot of similarities. You got all your tools down here at the bottom, okay? Your audio, your video, this is you sharing, and your students see something very similar. Any students that you have in your session will show up in the main page here. Again, if they have their video on, you're only going to see 4 at a time, right? Up here, this is your main menu here. When you open it up, It's where you can start recording, or you could use this reminder over here to do it. You can use a telephone with this like you can Zoom. You don't worry about too much of this unless you really do want to go for help. And then when you're ready to leave the session, you can leave it right here. Right? You can close that menu, and then everything that you need to work with is down here in this panel button. But I'm going to go ahead and click on record, and it tells you your session is being recorded. Over here at the top left, you see that there's actually a little video icon that's red. That shows your recording. But when you open up this panel, here's where you get all your features like Zoom to do things in addition to just chat with your students via audio and video. So this panel has 1, 2, 3 different ways to interact with the students. This is just going back and looking at your settings again if for some reason you have to change something while you're actually in the session, okay? But these 3 are your interaction tools. So chat, it's chat. I don't need to spend too much time here. You can pick someone, but we don't have anybody else in the session, so we can't. And so at this point, we're picking everyone, and it's just a matter down here in the box to start typing something, hit enter or click send, and boom, it's in chat. Now, one thing that's really different in the interfaces between Zoom and Collaborate is that you can't break out the pieces of Collaborate like you can Zoom. Remember, there was a chat box, and you can actually move that box away. And if you brought up participants, which we didn't do in Zoom, you could move that away. It's all modular, but that's not the way it is in Collaborate. All these pieces of the Collaborate interface are kind of fixed. You can modify their and expand them a little bit, but you can't move them around like you can in Zoom. So that's chat. Then the next one we have are attendees, is what it's called in Blackboard Collaborate. It's participants in Zoom, all right? But you would see your whole list of attendees here. And these little buttons next to your attendees allow you to do things to them, like mute them if you have to, or kick them out of the room if they're not playing the game right, or whatever. So you got all those things right here. You can make people hosts or presenters, etc. That's your participant list. And then finally, to share content, a little bit differently in terms of comparison to Zoom, but here's what you can do. You can bring up a whiteboard that you can annotate on. You can show your screen or your application, which Zoom did as well. You can just specifically make your camera prolific, and you can share some files. Now, the only files you can really share are PowerPoint presentations and PDFs, but you could do so right here. And then your interactive capabilities right here are polling and breakout rooms. Okay, so it's all in this one panel as compared to them being sort of piece by piece on the Zoom dock in the Zoom interface. So if we wanted to share a whiteboard, we would just click that. Each of these tools are mutually exclusive. You can only do one thing at a time. So here's our whiteboard. You know, we pick up a pen and we start having some fun. Yeah, that's actually a 737 Max. No, never mind. That's a bad place to go. I just thought of that on the fly, and that was really terrible. I'm sorry. Scratch that. And then when you're done, you can simply click this stop button, and it brings you back to where you were. So if it's time to bring the share application up, you click that button, very similar to Zoom. You got to choose what you want. And once you choose, notice here too, it says, do you want to share audio? You know, once you share, now it's going to show my desktop. What is that? Everybody always says, what is that? Well, I'm sharing my desktop. My desktop is the Zoom of the Collaborate session. So it's a picture of a picture of a picture of a picture ad infinitum. So until I move away from that and go to, for instance, this, now you see what it is I'm sharing. And then I can simply stop sharing down here and then go back to my collaborate session. Here I am. Or I can stop sharing by using the stop sharing button, similar to what we saw with the whiteboard right up here at the top right. See that square? That will stop the share as well. All right. The camera, I can just bring up my camera, but remember I said there was something that you were going to notice? Because I'm using my camera in Zoom, I can't use it in Blackboard Collaborate. So don't try to use two applications at the same time with your camera. It doesn't work. Okay. So let's get out of that. All right, and then sharing files. So notice it says you can drop PowerPoint or PDF files in here. If you drop in a PowerPoint, what happens is when it'll take those PowerPoint slides and convert them into individual pictures. And then one by one, you can go through your pictures in this area right here. Okay, you have a little arrow, back and forth arrows, and you simply can go through your slides like it's a PowerPoint. So somebody was asking me about that, different ways of showing it, right?
Yeah.
So if you were going to have a PowerPoint, you could either do it this way, and you could show one slide at a time through this share files capability, or you could use the application share capability, have PowerPoint up on your desktop, and just run through it there, just like I did with Zoom before. Here's my PowerPoint, right? Okay, so I'm doing application sharing inside of Collaborate, but I'm really right in my PowerPoint. And I'm just going through the slides that I have up on my desktop.
Okay.
Make sense? Stop sharing. Go back to the Zoom session, Collaborate session. Sorry, I keep getting mixed up. And then polling. So you can pick, it's not as elaborate. Well, I'd have to say Zoom polling isn't that elaborate either, but you really only have multiple choice or yes, no possibilities. You basically put your question in here and indicate whether the answer you think is yes or not. Well, I thought it would actually pick that. And then you pick start, and then it pops up for your students to see, and then your students get to answer, right? And then you stop the poll, and then you can show the results. With breakout groups, a little bit different, but similar to Zoom. Again, it doesn't make any sense because I have nobody here as attendees. But if I had attendees, I start with 2 groups, but if I want to add another group, there's 3. So I have 1, 2, and 3. And I would just put people into each group. And then I would select start, and they would all be broken out into their sessions. And then when I want them to come back, I just bring them back in. Notice that you can have it custom assigned, or you can allow the attendees to switch groups in this case, which you can't do, I don't think, with Zoom. I don't think you can allow them to switch groups, but if you want them to do like a little bit of a round table amongst the number of groups that you make, they can actually go from one to the other with that tool. So those are the main pieces of interacting with your students with each of these tools. And you can see that they both have similar capabilities. They go about it a little bit differently. And with each feature, I would say that maybe one tool has a little bit of an advantage over another. But in a nutshell, they both do almost the same thing. So in recommendation that I always have to folks is, use whatever works best for you. Let's talk about one other thing before we go, and that is we briefly talked about bandwidth and internet connectivity before. I'm of the thinking, and this is anecdotally speaking and through the people that I've worked with throughout the last 9 months, that most people who may have not so-so or so-so internet connections will do a little bit better on Zoom than they will on Blackboard Collaborate. Seems to me that Collaborate's a little bit more, it hogs the bandwidth a little bit more. It requires a little bit more than Zoom does. And besides that, even if you were to use one or the other, going back to that conversation about your video, it takes up more bandwidth. So again, have your video on early on, and then say to your students, you can turn your video off now, especially if you're having any bandwidth concerns, hearing me or you struggling on your site, whatever it may be. And keeping that video off should improve the bandwidth for all users, regardless of whether you're using Collaborate or Zoom. Just a good rule of thought, a rule of thumb. And the other thing is, you make sure you tell your students, hey, when we're on these live sessions, I really, really, really recommend that you tell your brother and sister to go read a book for a little while and not be watching Netflix. And you make sure that you're close to your router or plug in with a wire or whatever, and try to give them as much utilization of the internet that they can in their own circumstances. All right, so do we have any questions? I'm sorry I kept you so long.
That was good, Joe.
Yeah, and I said this was the first time we really did the session, so I didn't have a run through. I didn't know exactly how long it was going to take, but thank you very much for sticking with me.
I learned a lot.
Any thoughts?
I want to try some of this.
Okay, good. And if I haven't answered your questions, please feel free to do one of three things. Send an email to NCC EdTech, and somebody will pick it up and get back to you. Send an email to me, or drop into our daily walk-in virtual help sessions every day, 12:30 to 3:30 on Zoom. And we usually post that in Today at NCC. I believe there might be a link to it off the CTLT page, but if you need me to send it to you, I can certainly do that. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Joe,
you.
I have a quick question that's off the subject.
Okay, well, let me say goodnight to everybody, and you and I can hang on if you want.
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right,
Thank
so you have the link. I hope everybody has the link to that document with the agenda.
Mhm.
I'm gonna put one more resource on there, and but that's actually dynamic. It's in my OneDrive, so as soon as I change that document, you're gonna get the updated document. So please use that document as a resource to get to the other resources.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good night.
thanks. I'm gonna turn off the recording, and everybody else have a good night too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Stop.